Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter, or of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. There's a lot for us to cover today, some important boxing topics, and we'll start off with Jermaine Franklin and Anthony Joshua. I did upload the video yesterday where I was talking about some of the comments that Derek James had made, which basically talks about the approach he's going to take with AJ and how there were an awful lot of positives there, things that I thought could really help AJ and could essentially lead to success. But there was also one or two comments which made me wonder whether he's really understood the psychological plight of Anthony Joshua and whether he could potentially be sowing some seeds of doubt in AJ without realizing that he's doing that. Check out that video and let me know what you think. Well, Jermaine Franklin, the next opponent of AJ, has chimed in. I'm not speaking about the same things that I was, but he's also trying to play some mind games here and trying to question whether a link up with Derek James is guaranteed to bring success for Anthony Joshua. He said, I don't really know how to feel about the Derek James thing because you're already kind of aggressive and Derek James trains aggressive fighters, so I don't see what more he can add to his game. But most of his guys are body hunters. You're 6'6". It's going to be harder for you to get down there and go to the body like that. Just because you lose, it doesn't mean it's your trainer's fault. It could be you. I don't blame the trainer. This is the third trainer he's had in 3 fights. At what point do you start blaming yourself and not the trainer? It can't be every trainer. Not every trainer can be making you lose. Maybe he's just trying to find a trainer that he's most comfortable with. But I feel like you and your trainer should have a really solid relationship, win, lose or draw. Early on, you're with these people and they don't get paid. They've been with you for years. They know you inside out. Your relationship might get a little shaky, but it's up to you to know how to fix it and bring it together. If you're not liking some stuff your coach is doing, you should be able to talk to him and tell him, I need to do this and I need to do that. If you can't reconcile, then that's okay. That's business. It's okay to go and get another coach, but I would at least try to fix what's going on first. Now, these are some really interesting comments here from Derek James. Firstly, he can't possibly know whether Anthony Joshua tried to fix what was going on first or not, right? But he did seem to lose the relationship with Robert Garcia quite early on. Even prior to the Usyk fight, there were 1 or 2 things that were being said from Garcia and from AJ that were almost contrasting. So whatever happened there, they didn't seem to gel as a pairing in terms of a relationship. And just like Derek James, Robert Garcia is also an elite level trainer. But the clever little comments that Franklin's put in there, first and foremost, he's questioning whether this guy you've brought in can actually help you. It's kind of like what you're used to seeing anyway. It's not going to make any great changes. You are who you are. And with that in mind, you being who you are and a leopard doesn't change its spots, you need to stop blaming your trainers because maybe the problem's with you. In other words, the insinuation here is that if you're the one who's not good enough to be winning these fights, this trainer is not going to be able to change that. So there's some clever little mind games going on there from Jermaine Franklin. Let me know what you think about that. Moving on from Derek James and Anthony Joshua, let's talk about Tank Davis and King Rai. 16th of February 2023, the date this video will go out, and possibly a date with destiny for both Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia with regards to whether they will ever get in the ring or at least anytime soon. The reason today is such an important date is because according to Sean Zettel of Fight Hype, this is the date for the culmination of an incident that took place in November of 2020. It was reported that there was a vehicular hit and run incident and Tank Davis was facing 14 misdemeanor counts of traffic violations, but some of those violations are serious, whereby Tank is said allegedly to have fled the scene after causing a bodily injury to somebody else after he ran a red light. Not only did he run a red light and hit somebody or hit another car, the license that he had was suspended and actually revoked. So there are an awful lot of violations there which could carry a prison sentence. Now, initially, the prosecution had offered Tank a plea deal and they said 60 days of home confinement, of house arrest, and a 1-year suspended sentence. And Tank was prepared to accept that. But one of the victims who was refusing to settle out of court, Jaya Smith, she's taken this a lot more personally because she was pregnant at the time of the crash and she told the judge that she begged Gervonta Davis to help her, that she looked him directly in the eyes and she said to him, I've got a daughter at home, I'm pregnant, please help, don't leave me. And he never once came over to help her. He just got his things and he left the scene, she alleges. And so as a result of that, she feels that it's completely unacceptable for him not to serve prison time. She's not interested in a settlement outside of court. She wants him to go to prison. Now, this was being reported a couple of days ago by Sean Zettel of Fight Hype. And he was basically saying how she's very, very keen on pushing this through. The judge is also Melissa Finn, a lady who may very well sympathize with the plight of a pregnant woman in such a situation. So this is potentially a really serious issue for Tank Davis. If he does come through this unscathed, so to speak, and he's able to have some sort of a normal life moving forward, if he's not going to go to prison for any extended period of time, then maybe that's when they'll start to talk about announcing a fight between these two. Maybe that's what the delay has been. I know there's been a lot of talk about Tank making additional demands of, you know, a one-way rematch clause, and if he was to win, it would be his network that would host the rematch instead of Golden Boy and DAZN and stuff like that. I'm sure all that has played a big part as well. But regardless, is there a possibility that this has also meant that some people are a little bit nervous about announcing the fight? We'll find out, I guess, after today. Moving on from that, Frank and Francis Warren decided to meet Alex Krassyuk at the Emirates last night. Arsenal played Manchester City, of course, in the league, top versus second, and the second place team, Man City, won 3-1, leapfrogging Arsenal at the top of the table, although Arsenal do have a game in hand, I might add. But these guys met there. Frank Warren, obviously a big Arsenal fan, and you would like to think that they had some meaningful conversations. Krassyuk had been vocal this week, and he did say that Tyson Fury was being unreasonable for asking for anything more than a 50-50 split. He said, and I quote, "How can you justify this? Just because he's English? That doesn't sound like a big justification." From the other side, Fury can say, okay, but it doesn't matter who I'm fighting. Whether it's Usyk or a man from the supermarket, I can still sell out Wembley Stadium. But come on, man, this is sports. It's not just about professional boxing. Go to Hollywood if you want to make that kind of money. If you're the king, you've got to prove it against the guy with 3 belts. He does go on to say, I anticipate we will have a good chance of finalizing the deal, and that he's really optimistic, but that the only thing that can damage the fight is Fury. Usyk is very flexible. Money never touched his heart. He knows if he's successful in the ring, money comes his way. But the only concern I have is Tyson's attitude. Here's the thing, though. Whilst I agree that Alexander Usyk has shown a track record of being willing to travel the world, be on the road, not necessarily push for unfair splits or too much money. But let's not pretend that Usyk hasn't also been interested in finances. Who remembers that famous tweet when Eddie Hearn and Usyk were initially in conversation and trying to negotiate a fight for the first AJ fight? And he said to Eddie, more money, Eddie. You remember that? Additionally to that, when he was going to fight Joe Joyce, did he not ask for something ludicrous like 97% of the split? Now, in fairness to Alexander Usyk, I don't believe that that was a real offer. I think what happened there is they were fully aware that the court case was going to decide whether Fury was going to fight Wilder for a 3rd time. And so they needed to delay the situation rather than sign to fight Joe Joyce and then have to be involved in a situation where they've got to pay legally or whatever it is in order to break that deal, break that contract. So what they wanted to do is delay and give such an unreasonable offer that it would be forced to go to purse splits. And by the time they would go to purse splits, the outcome of the Wilder Fury arbitration would have been found out. So I don't actually think that was a real offer. But nonetheless, when it suited them, they were speaking about splits and they were speaking about money in that regard. He wasn't saying, this is my opportunity to become a unified champion of the world, and so I'm going to fight for free. So yes, Alex, I agree. It shouldn't be too far off from 50-50. Whether it's 50-50, 55-45, even maybe 60-40, I can sort of understand it from Tyson Fury's perspective. Not that I necessarily agree with it. I do think this should be a 50-50 fight. Nonetheless, let's not pretend that this is something that suddenly you guys don't care about. Let's be fair here. And is Tyson Fury simply holding out, therefore, for money? Because I know a lot of people are still feeling that he's trying to duck Usyk. Let me know what you think about that. Moving on from Alex Krassyuk meeting the Warrens, There's been a cinema beef between Lawrence Okolie and Richard Riakporhe. They were attending a premiere of Creed 3, and it was actually Spencer Fearon, who I've been talking a lot about on this channel of late, actually. He's the one that jumped in and tried to break these guys up. But let's try and look at this slow motion and see what happened here. You can see Lawrence Okolie on the right-hand side here. You can see Richard Riakporhe on the left. And something seemed to have been said, and you can see their wrists are touching. So they're almost hand to hand, but they're not shaking hands or anything like that. They're not spudding. It seems to be like it's a little, I want to say a guard, like Lawrence Okolie's a bit careful of the lead hand there of Richard Riakporhe, and he just puts a little bit on it there, and you can see Riakporhe sort of push back and then extend his hand towards the face of Okolie as Okolie extends his hand under the armpit of Riakporhe, trying to push him away. That's not really a punch, but it's like he was trying to palm him in the face, it felt like to me. And you can see he's then trying to get at Okolie, and he's saying, what did you say? What did you say? What are you saying? What are you saying? And Okolie, you'll see in one moment, has his hand sort of palm outwards. You see his eyes open there. Okolie's almost saying, like, what are you reacting like that for? You can't tell from this fuzzy footage. It does look like maybe he's smiling. I'm not sure. But did he say something to wind up Riakporhe? Or was he, you know, I don't know, did he do something? But you can see it there as well. He's just sort of pushing him back, holding him back, as you can see there. Riakporhe's trying to get to him, though. Riakporhe seems to have lost his head a little bit. And there's Okolie there, just on the right-hand side, still holding his jacket. He's just looking to maintain range. And there comes Spencer Fearon, the hero of the day. Check him out of his suit again, man. Spencer's always looking sharp in a suit, isn't he? But the point is, these two were engaging in parliamentary procedure, as Chris Eubank Jr. would like to say, less than, what, 2 weeks ago, a week ago, when they were on Sky Sports, and everything was very amicable. Richard Riakporhe was very softly spoken. And then when they got together away from the cameras, you could see that there is needle between these guys. I know a few people have been saying this is blatantly staged and stuff like that. I'm not so sure. I don't think this was staged. It looked like it was pretty real to me. Doesn't mean just because there's a few handbags, so to speak, a push and a shove and a pull and a pull, as Carl Froch would say, that someone's looking to lay someone out. Yeah, I know a lot of people are going to say, why weren't punches thrown? There's different levels of losing your temper. You can have a little bit of a nudge here and there, and you're on the verge of losing your rag. But you haven't quite lost it at that point. Something was said. I don't know what it was, but something seemed to have been said that wound Riakporhe up. Let me know what you think about this, and if it gives you an insight into either of their mindsets. Is it possible that Lawrence Okolie said something recently because he told Sky Sports that he thinks that Chris Billam-Smith would beat Richard Riakporhe in a rematch? He said, I do think their first fight was a close competitive fight, or I actually thought Chris won. Maybe I was a bit biased at the time because we were in the same gym, but I did think he won that fight. Since then, with Riakporhe, I haven't seen massive improvements. I think he's a little bit more composed, but I think that Chris has gone through the fire. He's been in grudge matches. It would be a massive fight. There would be a lot of grudge. The energy would be very different from the first fight. I would favour Chris in that fight, unless obviously Riakporhe landed something crazy. Now, the insinuation there is that Riakporhe would have to get a lucky punch. He has to land something crazy, otherwise I'm favouring Chris. Now, recently, he also said that he would give himself 60% chance to beat Chris Billam-Smith. We spoke about that in a previous video too. So if he feels that Chris would edge Riakporhe, and he gives himself 60% chance to beat Smith, is he saying he gives himself 65% chance to beat Riakporhe? I know that triangle theories don't work like that in boxing, but in terms of what he's trying to achieve by saying these things, is it a case of him feeling, listen, I've got Chris, I know I could beat Chris, I feel that from sparring in the gym, let me try and place some seeds of doubt in the mind of Riakporhe? Or maybe he's thinking, I don't want to fight either of these two guys. Chris knows what I'm like in the gym, he knows I'm a potential, my potential weaknesses and struggles, he's a very good inside fighter, predominantly I like to tie up inside. Maybe Chris knows how to stop Okolie from tying him up on the inside. Maybe he's figured that out through sparring, and Okolie's thinking that's a risky fight. And on the other hand, Riakporhe is a big banger, and Sky are talking about getting him in the ring with me. Maybe I should get these two to occupy each other while I focus on some other guys, some of the bigger names, just to take away that sort of interest from me. Let them handle their smoke. Maybe that's the approach Okolie's thinking about. Or maybe he's just being honest. Let me know what you think about everything that we've covered today, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.